Thomas knows every part of his branch line. Just ahead was a stretch where the hot sun had bent the rails on the track. "Careful, Thomas," called his driver, but it was too late. "That's done it," said his driver. "We shan't get any further today." "But what about my passengers?" asked Thomas. "Don't worry, they'll be looked after," replied his driver.
Edward was approaching a signal. He was thinking about rocking, and he was going too fast. Suddenly, the signal changed. He looked at the heavy pipes and wondered what to do.
He just grew unhappier, and he was rough with the freight cars. "You're no good, Oliver. You're dangerous. We want Percy. Percy's far too busy to be bothered with the likes of you." And Oliver bumped the freight cars hard. "You silly engine," shouted a workman. "It'll take a long time to repair this turntable, which will cause confusion and delay." "That's nice. We don't need to stop," said Thomas happily. "Yes, we do," called his driver. But it was too late.
All the flour was ruined, and the miller was upset. Thomas didn't notice the lightings and biffed into the buffers. Sticky taffy splattered everywhere. "Oh no," moaned Thomas. "I can't give the children train rides when I'm this messy."
Else. "There's no sign of a tail lamp," he puffed. He whistled, but there was no reply. Meanwhile, Henry had noticed something too. No one was hurt, but a strong smell of fish hung in the air.
Meanwhile, Daisy, her diesel rail car, was on her way back to her shed. But then there was trouble. Oh no! Look out!
When he approached the chocolate factory, his driver applied the brakes. But Percy's wheels just skidded on the oily rails. "Oh no!" hooted Percy. "Yuck," he groaned. "I've never been this dirty." He was covered from funnel to firebox in sticky, gooey chocolate.
He was still thinking about the difficult bend. Thomas went too fast and gave the coaches a mighty biff. The coaches rolled along the line and bumped into James. "Watch what you're doing," James snorted. "Sorry," Thomas puffed. Thomas was missing Annie and Clarabelle. He would never have biffed into them.
The next day, Gordon was traveling to collect his train. "We'll show that whirlybird just how fast you can go, Gordon," said his driver. But because they were watching Harold, they missed the signal and went onto the wrong line. Gordon was traveling to trouble. Ahead was a tunnel under repair. His driver reduced steam and braked hard. But it was too late.
Oh, glory! Look at that! James was just pulling out on their line from the station ahead. Any minute, there could be a crash. "It's up to you now, Duck," cried the driver. Duck put every ounce of weight and steam against the cars. "It's too late!" Duck groaned. He veered into a siding where a barber had set up shop. He was shaving a customer. The silly cars had knocked their conductor off his van and left him far behind after he had whistled the warning. But the cars didn't care. They were feeling very pleased with themselves.
Oliver marshaled the worst cars 2 by 2.
That's the way, Mr. Oliver.
Whispered Toad.
And if you leave that Scruffy till last, then you'll have him behind you, and you can bump him if he starts his nonsense. Hold back,
Whispered Scruffy.
and pass the word to the others.
The silly cars giggled. But Oliver knew what to do. There was plenty of sand on the rails and his wheels gripped splendidly. He gave a great heave. Oh, groaned Scruffy.
I don't like this.
Go on, yelled Duff. Well done, boy, well done. Oh, wailed Scruffy.
I'm coming apart.
And he did. Then there was trouble. Well, Oliver, so you don't know your own strength, is that it? No, sir, said Oliver nervously. Sir Topham Hatt inspected Scruffy.
As I thought. Rotten wood, rusty frames. Maybe if we put you back together, you'll earn yourself a better name.
Thomas. I didn't need that stupid old thing yesterday, and I shan't today. Snow can't stop me. He rushed into a tunnel thinking how clever he was, but there was trouble ahead. Cinders and ashes, said Thomas. I am stuck. And he was.
Then Henry looked up and saw Cranky. Cranky was very tall. But Henry didn't see the flagpole. It was on the flatbed in front of him. It rolled onto the track. Oops, sorry, matey, called Salty. I didn't expect to see the flagpole down there, puffed Henry. It's not tall when you lay it down, matey, said Salty. Henry felt very silly. Henry saw Thomas waiting up ahead. Look, Henry, tooted Thomas, there are lots of heavy freight cars. Here comes Gordon, whistled Thomas. And here comes big, strong Henry, hooted Henry. Then there was trouble. The freight cars were very heavy. Once Henry had started them rolling, they wouldn't stop. Help! Cried Henry.
Go on, they yelled and bumped Percy's driver and fireman off the footplate. Ow, said Percy, sliding past the board. Percy was frantic. That's enough! Percy was sunk. He came back to take the loaded cars away. But they were comfortable and didn't want to move.
What right has he to poke his funnel in here?
We want Duck or Donald.
Or Douglas. Look sharp.
Puffed Oliver. That's not the way to speak, hissed the cars. We'll get even. Oliver heard nothing. The cars moved smoothly at first, then suddenly Oliver felt them push forward. His driver applied the brakes, but they were useless against the surging cars. On, yelled the cars. Oliver fought hard, but still they forced him on and on. cars grew tired. "I'm winning," gasped Oliver. But it was too late. Oliver lay bruised and bemused, bunker down in the turntable well. "Danger lay ahead. Now for our plan," giggled the cars. "Go faster, go faster." They pushed Thomas over the switches. "Slow down," called Thomas's driver and applied the brakes. Poor Thomas stood dazed and surprised in a muddy pond as a toad eyed him suspiciously. "Bust my buffers," muttered Thomas. "The day started so well, too."
Soon Thomas was on his way to pick up the workers at the new station. Difficult bend, he puffed nervously. The difficult bend came nearer and nearer. Thomas was supposed to slow down, but he wanted to get past the bend quickly. So Thomas went faster and faster. The coaches rattled and shook. Soon be over, Thomas said to himself. And soon it was. Luckily, no one was hurt. But Thomas felt sadder than ever.
Diesel, thinking he could get away with his bad behavior, was ruder than ever. Next day, he was shunting freight cars full of china clay. He banged the cars hard into the buffers, but the buffers weren't secure. The silly cars were sunk. Sir Topham had heard the news. The cars were hoisted safely from the sea, but the clay was lost.
Finish first, James puffed happily. He started to go faster, and faster, and faster. But he didn't know how very icy the tracks were. His wheels started to slip and slide. "Oh my!" cried James, and he applied his brakes as hard as he could. Whoa! Edward tried to brake as well, but it was too late. "Bust my buffers!" cried James. "Oh dear," wheezed Edward. Sir Topham had arrived on Salt. He was very cross.
Duck had stopped at the crossing at the bottom of the hill. Arthur's driver applied the brakes, but it was too late. Squashed fruit flew everywhere. Arthur was upset. His spotless record was ruined.
Next, he was pulling some heavy freight cars. Then there was trouble. Thomas was puffing too fast round the bend. He toppled off the track. His load crashed down the bank. "Oh no," cried Thomas. Luckily, no one was hurt.
Thomas steamed as fast as he could along the line. But there was trouble ahead. Some faulty points sent his trucks one way, and Thomas onto the old pier rail. The trucks were delighted. He's fallen in the water. Luckily, Thomas wasn't hurt, and the fish truck stayed on the tracks.
But Emily didn't toot at all. This made Gordon very cross. He was so cross that he didn't see the signal telling him to stop. And he didn't see the goods train ahead until it was too late. Luckily, no one was hurt. But Gordon came off the rails and he was covered in gooey red jelly.
Oh!
The rusty coupling broke. Thomas's trucks were rolling by themselves. "Cinders and ashes!" cried Thomas. Thomas applied his brakes, but he stopped too quickly. The trucks bumped into the back of Thomas, and the coal spilled all over the tracks. Thomas was stuck.
Now for my plan, thought Thomas. Bumping the cars fiercely, he jerked his driver off the footplate and followed them into the siding. "Come back!" yelled his driver. "Fire and smoke," said Thomas. "I'm sunk!" And he was.
Edward screeched to a stop, but the sides of the freight cars collapsed. Steel pipes toppled all over the tracks. "Bust my buffers!" puffed Edward. He looked at the heavy pipes and wondered what to do. Then they heard Gordon. He was going fast. Then there was trouble. Gordon hit the pipes with a loud crunch. He came off the tracks. It was a terrible mess.
"Glad I'm a splendid engine," he puffed. "Sir Topham Hatt thinks I'm really useful. I had a race with Bertie once. I whooshed through the tunnel and stopped an inch from the buffers." Then Thomas made his mistake. "Just like this," he boasted.
Bill tried his best to get on with his work, but the troublesome trucks had spotted a chance for a tease. Poor Bill, he works, he suffers, while Ben, his twin, gets brand new buffers. "I might not have new buffers," he said, "but I still know how to biff troublesome trucks." "No!" Mavis cried. But it was too late. Ben puffed into the quarry with his shiny new buffers just in time to hear, "Bust my buffers!" cried Bill. "I think you have," said Ben.
Frantically trying to grip the rails, Percy slid into the yard. "Peep, peep! Look out!" The brake van was in smithereens. Percy's driver and fireman had jumped clear, but Percy was stranded.
This made Emily very cross, and she biffed them very hard. "Oh no!" they cried, and they splashed into the duck pond. Emily was covered in a floury mess. Toby still didn't want to speak to Sir Topham Hatt. Quickly, he reversed into a siding. It didn't see that a big rock had fallen on the line. "Bust my cowcatchers!" he cried. Luckily, no one was hurt. Percy was waiting at a signal. Arthur puffed slowly into a siding. He had heavy wagons of fish. "Look out, Arthur!" Arthur's wheels spun as he raced straight into the buffers. The fish shot into the air. "Oh no!" cried Arthur. Just then, Thomas chased through the junction. "Sorry, Arthur," he gasped. "I have to keep up with the runaway car."
Thomas puffed into the yard and backed up to the paint trucks. But Diesel was in the yard too. "Now I'll show Thomas who's best," Diesel whispered, and he gave the trucks an extra hard shunt. Paint pots flew into the air and splattered down all over Thomas. There was green paint, yellow paint, and red paint. Thomas looked very silly indeed. "Stripy boiler," laughed Diesel, and he rolled away. "I'll show those diesels," puffed Thomas.
Next, he was pulling some heavy freight cars. Then there was trouble. Thomas was puffing too fast round the bend. He toppled off the track. His load crashed down the bank. "Oh no!" cried Thomas. Luckily, no one was hurt.
But under the bridge, it wasn't Great Waterton. It was the shunting yard of a logging station. Gordon had never been here before. Then in the distance, he heard Stanley's whistle from the track below. "Stanley's catching up," he huffed to himself. "I must race ahead." Gordon pumped his pistons. Then there was trouble. Ben was shunting a flatbed with logs. Gordon biffed straight into them. The logs started to roll down the hill. "Bust my buffers. Those logs will block the lower track. I must stop Stanley." But Gordon didn't know which track to take to find Stanley. Gordon was lost. Then, up ahead, Thomas saw a water tower through the trees. The water tower was starting to wobble. Thomas saw Duck was right next to it. "Oh no! The water tower is going to fall on Duck. I must rescue him." Thomas blew his whistle loudly. "Quick, Duck! Move! Now!" Duck puffed quickly forward. The water tower crashed to the ground. "I rescued you." "No, you didn't. Rocky was putting the water tower on my flatbed, and now it's smashed."
Gordon was roaring towards Percy.
"Out of my way! Express coming through!"
"Out of my way! Mail coming through!"
But Gordon didn't get out of Percy's way. Suddenly, Percy was worried.
"Oh my! Oh no! Oh help! Whoa!"
"Oh!"
Gordon swerved and swayed into a siding. He bashed the buffers and toppled off the tracks. Percy felt terrible. Now, he didn't feel bold at all. He felt very silly.
Then there was more trouble. With too many rocks and no brake van to help him slow down, Thomas couldn't stop.
Percy! Thomas? Look out! Look out! Oh! Sorry, Percy. Rocky!
Oh, dear.
Fizzling fireboxes! Rocky, are you okay?
There was Edward with Henry's lucky trucks. "I found you," Henry chuffed excitedly. But he puffed too quickly. His wheels slid on the icy tracks. And he biffed right into his lucky trucks. "Oh no! I've broken my lucky trucks," groaned Henry. Finally, Thomas saw the Sodor River Bridge ahead. The builders were waiting. "Hooray! I've made it! Here I come with the last special delivery!" Thomas knew he had to slow down now, but he couldn't. Thomas's brakes had stopped working altogether. "Fizzling fireboxes, what can I do?" With a clang and a crash, Thomas clanked off the rails. His flatbed bashed his buffers with a bump. The last of the special blocks fell from his flatbed into the water. Cinders and ashes. I've lost some of the special blocks. He clickety-clacked around a bend, straight into an old freight car.
Flatten my funnel. Who left that there?
Henry's piston rods were bumped and bent.
I mustn't be late. I mustn't be late.
Then there was trouble. Thomas didn't know that his couplings had unhooked. Thomas raced on to the town hall, alone. Then there was trouble. Harvey was replacing some tracks. Workmen had put a barrier across the track to warn the engines, but Thomas was now going too fast to stop safely. He bashed into the barrier, and the light bulb broke. Cinders and ashes, cried Thomas. The lighthouse will not have its light, and the ships won't be safe at sea. Then Henry looked up and saw Cranky. Cranky was very tall, but Henry didn't see the flagpole. It was on the flatbed in front of him. It rolled onto the track. Oops, sorry, matey, called Salty. I didn't expect to see the flagpole down there, puffed Henry. It's not tall when you lay it down, matey, said Salty. When he saw Thomas in the sidings, he took a big puff and blew as loud as he could. Thomas was cross. That wasn't funny, he sniffed. Percy didn't notice. He was too busy having fun.